This time, England World Cup 1986. Too hot to handle? If only.
'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the impossible to rank once and for all who is the greatest team of all time. My name's Graham Dunn, making the case, as ever, for Oxford United, and joining me, King of the Data, Jamie Rooney.
Good evening, Graham. And we're close to the end of the season. And I feel we've created these incredible traditions. And what better tradition can we have by having another England team and almost welcoming home a member of the family for this one? It's our England man, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant to have back on the pod. Steve Double, welcome back, Steve.
Hello, thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to it. It's World Cup season again now, isn't it? We can look behind us and look forward to lots of late nights, early mornings.
Yeah, which was definitely the case with Mexico '86. I have really clear memories of staying up to watch the games, and sort of I think there must have been maybe that I don't think they're quite as late, but maybe they were 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that. They didn't seem that late. I don't remember any, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning ones like we're going to, face in a few weeks' time. It all seemed sort of quite a reasonable sort of time, which, given the time difference, was a bit odd.
Yeah, it's how the FIFA world has changed, because back in 1986, there were 14 European teams of the 24. So the times were tailored towards the European market. So it was all about making sure the Europeans got first dibs. Now that's all changed, as we know, because we're going to be watching games at 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. now, as the Europeans take second fiddle to the rest of the world. FIFA finally balanced things out, I guess. But yeah, back in 86, it was a pro-European tournament.
Yeah, it was actually the last time we had three of the home countries involved.
Yeah.
Scotland, Northern Ireland, and ourselves. That's the last time we had three represented.
And that's Scotland's side. I mean, the two things I remember, one is kind of Gordon Strachan's goal celebration or veiled attempt to jump the advertising hoardings. But I mostly remember the game against Uruguay and the guy getting sent off after a minute, which I'm actually sure was a wrong card, a mistake, and he just styled it out.
Yeah, absolutely. The Northern Ireland side was pretty strong. I was looking at their squad and it was pretty decent. You had the Norman Whitesides, Pat Jennings still in goal, aged over 40, Billy Hamilton, Mount Donaghy, a lot of very established top tier players from back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. It seemed to be growing up, it seemed to be a standard. Northern Ireland and Scotland always qualified for the World Cup. Didn't realise at the time it was a treat to see them both there. But yeah, Northern Ireland qualified in the same group as England. They were in the same qualification group and came second.
I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten about that.
So, I mean, it's quite strange because this tournament wasn't even meant to be in Mexico, was it? It was always Latin America. But was it Colombia, or where was it originally?
Yeah, Colombia got awarded the hosting of the World Cup for '86 in 1974, because obviously FIFA do these things well in advance to allow for countries to prepare. And Colombia were preparing for a 16-team tournament. Then in 1978, 4 years later, FIFA decided they're going to extend the World Cup, which they did in 1982, to 24 teams, to which Colombia might have pushed back and said, I don't think we can handle 24 teams, and pulled out of the process, leaving FIFA with a bit of a gap to fill, which the USA, Canada and Mexico all threw their hat into the ring, and Mexico got awarded the World Cup, the first country to host a men's FIFA World Cup twice.
And Mexico, of course, was sort of properly hot, wasn't it? I kind of remember this was the first World Cup I can remember people talking about altitude training as a kind of major thing, and getting to grips with it.
I'm curious to know though, Steve, you've been on before, and obviously we did the 1990 England World Cup where you were a fan. We did the 1996 where you were up front and personal with El Teo and Terry Venables. In 1986, where were you? How were you enjoying this World Cup?
I was at home watching it on the telly. I mean, I was a journalist at the time, but I wasn't working on it. I have to say, subsequently, I worked pretty much pretty much every one. 88 when I went to Germany, went to all the games there, and what a disaster that was. And, funny enough, I just looking at the two squads, there wasn't a huge amount of difference,
Yeah.
between having done, 86, I think, getting a bit of ahead of ourselves. It was almost like the classic England World Cup performance, wasn't it? Start badly, sort things out, get ahead of steam, and then glorious failure. That's been the sort of the playbook forever, hasn't it? And that's pretty much what 86.
It absolutely is, isn't it? Even more so than I the only thing that's missing is is going out on penalties or some kind of penalties disaster.
Yeah, that's true. That's true enough.
It's still a glorious way that they go out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's quite interesting. Just going, you look at the squad, and again, there's no particular surprises. Sometimes, you look at any of the squads from back in the day, you think, what the hell is he doing there? But by and large, it's all fairly predictable, really. Apparently, it all kicked off at the time because Liverpool won the double, but there were no Liverpool players in the side. But given that, I think that Liverpool were their superstars for the day were the Dalglishs and the Hansons, wouldn't they? I think. Whereas conversely, it was Everton who provided Peter Reid, Gary Stevens, Trevor Stephen, who was always excellent for England, I thought. But famously, Bobby Robson used to get Gary Stevens and Trevor Stephen mixed up all the time. The great story, my favourite Bobby Robson story, which I'm sure you might have heard before, is where it actually happened in Mexico in 86 when he came down for breakfast and looked at Bryan Robson and said, "Good morning, Bobby." Bryan Robson turned and said, "No, I'm Bryan, you're Bobby." Classic Robson, wasn't it? Classic Robson.
You're absolutely right. You either had to be called Stevens or Gary Stevens or Trevor Stephen or Robson, Bobby Bryan, or Stuart Robson was the standby midfielder. So we came really close to another Robson.
Yeah. I didn't realise that Peter Shilton, even then, was 36. Of course, he played in 1990 at 40. At 36. Yeah. Wow, But the only thing, I was looking, did we not have in terms of centre-half partners for Terry Butcher, it was Fenwick. And I was trying to think, I would tend to think of Fenwick as a fullback. I don't know, am I wrong?
No, I think you're right. I think Terry Fenwick and Gary Stevens, the Brighton Gary Stevens, were both these kind of fullback, centre-back, midfield. They could play almost anywhere, but you're right. I think Fenwick, I have to say that Fenwick was the one, not a surprise, but that was the bit I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten that Fenwick was our first choice centre-back in that. Yeah. Which does seem a bit odd.
As we're talking about later, pivotal in the game against Argentina as well for reasons we have to discuss. But I'm just trying to remember whether we were wildly optimistic or not at the time. I think we were hopeful rather than, we're going to win it, boys, rather than...
Because obviously we didn't make it to the European Championships in 84, although arguably that's harder to get in because there were only 8 teams in that tournament. But, so there was no great, bit of confidence from that. And also I think the whole tournaments being played in Latin America was a kind of... Because I don't think Jamie, you'll know this, but had a European side ever won it outside of Europe?
I don't think so. No.
So up until 86, the only team that had won it outside the continent of the host country was Brazil in 58. Other than that, it'd all been... you say Brazil won in Mexico, so South America won in what was the CONCACAF region, but I think I'm going to go with your Latin America as the location, the geographical location. But no European team had won away from European soil in 1986. I think Spain did it in 2010.
I think it probably has. I think we probably went into it with the same sort of slightly naive optimism that we're not going to lose 5-0 in an Ashes series in Australia. The facts tell you're probably not going to win this, and this is only going to end one way. But I think the other thing that we have... which because it's funny you pick out this being absolutely the England playbook, and of course one of those bits of playbook is having the injured star player, isn't it? I mean, our hopes rested on a lot of them rested on Bryan Robson's shoulders, and Bryan Robson's shoulders were mostly in the treatment room that season.
Yes, and dislocated. Yeah,
Very
no,
good.
he'd had this ongoing issue with his shoulder, hadn't he? I think it was like he only had to sort of put his hand up, and it was dislocated shoulder time. But I think because it was second game, wasn't it? He went, and I think sort of the nation's hopes died with him. And of course, you had the ridiculous situation as British football's most mild-mannered gentleman, Ray Wilkins, getting sent off after it was just that was on anybody in anybody's script either, was it? It was just that's when things were seriously going wrong.
Yeah, because at that point, England had lost to Portugal in the first group game. They were goalless against Morocco. And it was that really bizarre. It was 3 minutes of just madness. Wilkins picks up a yellow card. Robson's shoulder pops out a minute later. And then Wilkins throws the football at the referee 1 minute after that. You got this 3 minutes of craziness that completely puts Bobby Robson's England team on his head because he's lost 2 of his 3 midfielders.
And I don't remember Wilkins ever doing anything like that.
No, never. It's unheard of. It was his angry Bambi moment, wasn't it? It shouldn't have happened at all. But apparently it was the unintentionally helped turn the team around because I was looking back at some of the reports at the time when there was unrest in the team, and I'm sure I've heard this before, where Bobby Robson has a players' revolt on his hands, and Bobby being a nice guy, sort of tweaks things a little bit. And apparently the feeling was that changes had to come, and it was actually losing Ray Wilkins. And also apparently Lineker felt a little bit stifled by having Mark Hateley as the big target man, and he actually preferred having the space in the box to run into on his own. And inadvertently that great partnership of Beardsley and Lineker was born out of this disastrous few minutes against Morocco.
Yeah, the formation England started with seemed a little odd, isn't it? Because those first couple of games, I think they're 4-3-3. And it feels, again, you can't imagine any England side doing this, where they might be trying to crowbar their 11 best players into a lineup rather than fitting them into a formation that works. But that seems to be how it was, because they had. Well, Jamie, you've looked at that formation. What was it 4-3?
Yeah, it feels like it was 4-3-3. So you've got the defense is fairly settled. So you've got Samson and Gary Stevens of Everton, I think, playing at fullback, and then you've got Fenwick, as we've mentioned, with Terry Butcher. And in the midfield is Wilkins, Hoddle, and Robson, which is quite a creative midfield. Obviously, Robson's box to box. Wilkins is that kind of sideways passer that he was known for. He's a lot better than that. We spoke about Reid many times on this thing, and a real luxury of player. And Hoddle was your spark. But in front of that, you've had, as Steve mentioned, Mark Hateley playing up front with Lineker, and Chris Waddle kind of drifting off on the left-hand side in a 4-3-3. So it feels just kind of outlining that as the formation that feels unbalanced. But yeah, Steve, I think you're right. And it's the Portugal game where they lose 1-0. It's a horrible performance. I think that was one of the few ones that was quite late at night, or early in the morning, I should say, because I remember being a school kid. I think I missed that one and then saw the result. And there's a lot of pressure on Robson, but he's gone with the same shape, the same formation into the Morocco game. And Morocco at this point have only been to a World Cup once before in 1970. So they were seen as the whipping boys. They actually topped the group. They win the group. But yeah, when Wilkins is sent off and Robson has been taken off, Bobby Robson has to do something quite dramatic in order to salvage that situation, because he was under incredible pressure at that point. So he kind of stumbled, I think, by accident into the 4-4-1-1 with the Beardsley and freeing up Lineker to do the things that Lineker was great at, which is basically just buzzing around the penalty box. But yeah, it feels like, I mean, Bobby Robson's a genius. We've talked about him many times. We all love him. But yeah, it just feels like he accidentally stumbled into this incredibly balanced England team.
Which does sort of echo a bit what happened at Italia 90 as well, where it seemed that
Bryan Robson
Oh,
got
I tell you what,
injured.
we might play five at the back. But you look at that side, he does come up. It suddenly looks much more. Peter Reid and Glenn Hoddle as a two is really. You can look at that side. Peter Reid, Glenn Hoddle in the middle, Trevor Stephen wide right, Steve Hodge. He's probably the Trevor Sinclair of that side, isn't he? Not necessarily the best player in the world, but obviously gave a bit of energy and could fit in on that left side. And suddenly that side looks much more organised, and you're playing Lineker in the 6-yard box rather than, because presumably if you had Haitley right up top, you were having to play Lineker fractionally to one side.
Which I mean, my memory is as Hodge has been a very effective England player.
Yeah.
Without actually ever, being a sort of a shining light. One of those players that always did a decent job without ever grabbing any headlines. Stephen was impressive. I think Stephen, because it wasn't the youngest of squads, was it? There wasn't any sort of up and coming Gascoigne types or or Sol Campbell. Everybody, I think Trevor Stephen was possibly might be the youngest, about 22, 23, but everybody else was mid-late 20s. Shilton being the old man of the squad at 36. So it was, there was no Sackers there. As there was, in 2021. It was pretty tried and trusted bunch, I think.
I think you're right. I think Stephen and Hodge on either side both give them both a bit of an injection of youth and probably energy that is probably missing across the rest of quite a tried and tested side. Plus one, which, as you mentioned, England have this habit, which they have continued pretty much spectacularly at every World Cup almost ever since, to play incredibly badly in the first game of the.
Absolutely, yeah. I can remember the Poland game, the third game. There's a huge sense of relief about that, and that was really Gary Lineker arriving not just on the world stage, but becoming properly recognised back home as well. Because that was a fantastic hat trick, wasn't it? It really was.
I mean, you look back at all Lineker's goals in that tournament, and I mean, are any outside the 6-yard box?
Yeah, that's right.
It's if you try and name what a Gary Lineker goal looks like, they all sort of look like those finishes. He's just very good at being in the right place.
No, that was.
I think he's having Beardsley playing in behind him in what was called the second striker role. Just allowed him the freedom, because Beardsley's playing between the midfield and Lineker, and such a wonderfully technically gifted player in terms of his qualities and reads the game really well. So I think his movement just off the ball allows Lineker to find spaces that probably wouldn't be there if he's partnered with Haitley up front.
And as you say, that Poland game turns everything around, and it's kind of turned around in. I mean, I don't remember for. Maybe not even during Italian nights. It's been a long time. Probably not until that Holland game in Euro 96, a game where England actually play so sort of positively, so vibrant, and win a game comfortably.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true, isn't it? If you look at going fast forward to 1990, we actually, we made heavy weather of getting out of the group. But at least in 90 we didn't lose. Unlike this one, so it was even a steeper improvement curve than the 1990, wasn't it? But then I think going on to Paraguay, I think that was seen as going to be a bit of a slam dunk. So suddenly things were opening up quite nicely. I've got a vague recollection because, of course, there was a huge political overhang about would England place Argentina, because it would be the first time since the Falklands War that the two sides would have met. And so there was an awful lot of chatter about that, and worries about the crowd. Talking about 86, I don't know about you, but I mean, obviously I've met a lot of England fans over the years. I've never met anybody who went. I've met England fans who went to Spain in 82, Italy in 90, obviously, France 98. I've not met anyone who went to Mexico. I mean, clearly they were there, but I don't think in the vast numbers that that we'd seen, because I suppose it was for the first really long distance World Cup. So while the sport was there, it wasn't there in humongous numbers. So apologies to anybody who's out there who wants there and say, well done. But I've never met anybody where.
No, I don't. I mean, again, as you say, it's so far away, and that's where you're kind of trying to. It's weird, isn't it? 1986 is. I mean, it's actually closer to England having won the World Cup than it is where we are now.
Quite a long way.
By a long way.
Yeah.
What the bit that really drove it home to me was that, as you say, big grudge. Are we going to set up this massive grudge match with Argentina? And obviously, the Falklands is a massive part of that. But Argentina, there's still a bit of. Argentina are still a bit unhappy with England, and there's a bit of bad blood based on Rattan getting sent off in 1966, and that actually isn't that long ago. I mean, it feels like a lifetime, but in 1986, that was only 20 years ago. We're still quite angry about Maradona, so it's quite surreal. As you say, I think the Paraguay game. I think that was seen as a slam dunk. It wasn't really. Paraguay, I think, have quite a good chance to take the lead before we did score, having watched the highlights again. But England are mostly comfortable in that game, I think, for the most part. Jamie, Paraguay, they must be one of the smaller teams entering the World Cup by that stage.
I think until Iceland, they were the smallest nation to ever qualify for a World Cup finals. And they're not like the big hitters of South American football. They don't qualify for World Cups all the time. They'd finished second in the group to where Mexico hosts were. So they'd come through a qualifying group with Mexico, Belgium and Iraq. And England had finished second in their group, Morocco winning the group, which put them in the half with Argentina, who won their group, where they had Italy. England, if they had won the group, would have gone on and met West Germany in the next round, who'd also finished second in their group because the great Danish team of 1986, whose colours I'm wearing today, had just absolutely lit up the whole tournament in 1986. And it seemed to be from the group stage, it was a shoo-in that they were going to win the World Cup. Spain had different ideas. Yeah, so the draw, as these things always go, I mean, good luck trying to predict the 2026 round of 32 and beyond that. But you kind of, before the tournament begins, you always pick out and you do your prediction. It never really turns out that way. There's always surprises in the World Cup. And yeah, England and West Germany both finished second they avoid each other, but England are in the half with Argentina. But yeah, Lineker gets 2 against Paraguay. Beardsley gets a World Cup goal as well, which he truly deserves. So Lineker gets all the plaudits of this football tournament, rightly so. But Beardsley, I think, was a great little sideshow in this England team. And it really put him on a pedestal as well. Because I think he's a Newcastle United player at this point, and he definitely is in the shop window. And then he moves on to Liverpool shortly after this World Cup.
And worth noting that Terry Fenwick misses this game because he's already suspended, having picked up 2 yellow cards in the group games. I don't particularly remember Fenwick as being a kind of hatchet man player, but this is obviously...
He's the only England player in England male football history to pick up 3 yellow cards in a single tournament. He gets booked in the first game against Portugal. He gets booked in the Poland game, which means he carries the suspension into the Paraguay game. Alvin Martin comes in. So there's your backup. Alvin Martin was the backup. West Ham's, I think, Alvin Martin plays with Terry Butcher. But then by the time we get to Argentina, Robson's resorted to type and Fenwick is in the team and gloriously picks up a yellow card after 9 minutes.
He gloriously picks up a yellow card, and as we'll talk about after the break, he could very easily... I mean, he should have picked up another yellow card, and he should have picked up another yellow card. So he should have had 3 right.
We could definitely talk about 1 yellow card, or his second yellow card he could have got when we get to one of those 2 goals.
So yes, 1986, we are set up. England have sort of stumbled onto some form. They're looking as though they're making their way, and we set themselves up for this game, this era-defining game against Argentina in the quarterfinals, and we'll talk about that after the break. So welcome back. We are in Mexico in 1986, England's glorious campaign, which is about to, set up an extraordinary game against Argentina in the World Cup quarterfinals. As we were talking about before the break, this game comes sort of 3-4 years after the Falklands War, and there's a sort of there's a weird kind of football relationship between England and Argentina. And I guess a lot of that comes from Tottenham, doesn't it? Because we have Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa at this point. And weirdly, there's sort of kind of an Argentinian football hero makes an appearance.
Yeah, so Ricky Villa and Ozzy Ardiles signed for Tottenham shortly after the 78 World Cup. And in 1986, Ozzy Ardiles is having what used to be the good old-fashioned testimonial, where a player would be given a match and then would take the gate receipts. Professional footballers don't need to do that now because they're paid incredible sums of money where they're looked after into old age. Back in the 1980s, it wasn't always the case. So this is on the 1st of May. So Ozzy Ardiles, his Tottenham team are playing Inter Milan, and it's Peter Shreves as well. He's the manager at the time, by the way, not David Pleat. And he brings in Diego Maradona. So Diego Maradona is in Europe. He's played for Argentina in Norway the day before. And Ozzy Ardiles has asked for Maradona to take part, and he does. And Glenn Hoddle gives up his number 10 shirt and wears the number 11 shirt. Maradona is so disorganized for this, he doesn't even have football boots. So Clive Allen has to lend him his 6.5 Puma King football boots. I mean, I knew Maradona had small feet for a footballer, but Clive Allen as well. That really surprised me. The fact that Clive Allen was able to lend Diego Maradona his football boots. But yeah, so Diego Maradona turns up at White Hart Lane, plays for Tottenham in a testimonial. Tottenham win 2-1. Clive Allen, I guess in a pair of his other boots, scores the winning goal. And Diego Maradona is absolutely loved by the English during this period. This is the 1st of May. So this is just like 6 weeks before England and Argentina faced in the quarterfinal. And obviously we've got that history of 1982 and the Falkland Wars. And Diego Maradona is just basically just saying, look, we don't need to worry about politics. This is football. Never the two shall meet. And I think that's always been the case, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Not the only Argentine World Cup hero to play for Tottenham in similar. So didn't Mario Kempes play for Spurs? I think he did something similar. Didn't he have a trial at Spurs?
Can't remember. You got me.
You told me this. This is definitely true.
My memory fails me these days.
Yeah, so Mario Kempes, sometime after the 78 World Cup, I think he has a trial at Spurs. So,
well, Maradona had a trial at Sheffield United.
Did he?
Really? in the late 1970s, early 80s, or maybe 1980, but they couldn't agree the fee.
Wow, I remember it must have been around the same time that Sheffield United had an Argentinian player called Alex Sabella. Who was probably one of the first South American imports, and that's probably the connection, because he was brilliant. So that seems crazy, doesn't it? I love these stories about the superstars who slip through people's fingers that you can't.
We'd have found out whether Maradona could do it on a cold, wet Tuesday night in Sheffield at Bramall Lane or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what year it was, whether it was this year or 87. But I went to Naples and I watched Maradona train. You'd get a few thousand going to watch him train. You were allowed in to watch him train, and the only footballer I saw who actually dived in training. He was. I just couldn't believe it. He was literally practicing his dives in training. Yeah, astrology. He was an amazing player, nonetheless. Yeah. So there was huge hype about the game. That there was, the political side, and of course, it was, it was going to be a tough game. And I don't think, as forever as England fans, we were hopeful rather than optimistic about how it would turn out. I think
so. And the other thing, I mean, the kits are quite curious that day, aren't they? Because England are in kind of white shirts, but with light blue shorts for some strange reason.
It might be something to do with the heat. I think I've got a vague recollection that they went for the pale colours to help combat the heat. Might be an old wives' tale, but I think that was possibly thinking behind it at the time.
And it's definitely what Argentina do, isn't it? So, Jamie, that is a bit of a ramshackle homemade kit, isn't it?
They got it from a local store in Mexico City. The blue kit, the Argentine away kit that they play England. So England have got, because of the heat, I mean, we haven't really focused on it. These games, as we mentioned, are played like at crazy times, 12 p.m., 1 p.m. in the Mexico summer. And the heat is crazy. I mean, you can feel the heat coming from the YouTube videos, just watching some video from some of the games from that particular World Cup. England have had they're kind of an aerated shirt. It's quite modern at the time. It had perforations, little holes in it, which allowed the air to circulate. So I think it was like a new trial with Umbro, who was the kit manufacturer at the time. Argentina's second kit was very heavy and was not conducive to very hot conditions. So the kit man at Argentina, or one of the guys responsible for the kit, had to go and find a kit that would withstand the temperature in the sweltering Mexico City Azteca Stadium, where this game is being played in front of 100,000 people. Yeah, so a local store, they find a kit. Maradona actually is the one that says, yeah, that's the one we'll wear. We'll have that kit. So he has final say. And then 2 days before the game, someone's frantically stitching Argentinian badges onto every kit and sewing silver numbers on the back. So yeah, that was not a kit that the Argentine team took to the World Cup. They actually purchased it during the World Cup. In fact, 2 days before they play England in the World Cup quarterfinal.
Because can you imagine that today?
It is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I think even at that stage, we kind of know that this is how do you stop Maradona, though, isn't it? I mean, I'm not sure has he done much in the tournament before this, but his reputation is such, because he really is at the top of his game at this stage, isn't he? And I think it's evident that if you're going to win this game, you have to stop Maradona from playing.
No, you found well, yeah, no, I think that was sort of patently obvious. And I was looking at a sort of a 10-minute highlights YouTube of the entire match, and the first half, it was pretty much one-way traffic. England weren't really getting a look at him, but they were containing Maradona quite effectively. And so I think, there was a collective sigh of relief. We got to half-time at 0-0. And it felt from a fan's point of view is that we maybe turned the corner. But of course, we didn't know what was to come, obviously. And the second half was the second half was a game of two halves, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah. So, first, really quickly, I can't remember what minute, Jamie, I'm sure you know what minute when we had the infamous hand of God, when what we really needed was a hand of VAR. Of course. And you look at that again, and of course, the one notable thing about the first half is that Terry Fenwick had been booked.
Yeah.
And of course, early in the second half, Maradona gets the ball in the centre circle, and he had two players on him. I think one of them was Peter Reid. I can't remember who the other one was. And he turns on a sixpence and he's away. And I don't know if you remember, poor Peter Reid is left sort of panting in his wake.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember today. Do you remember fantasy football and Skin and Badil had that thing of Peter Reid with a wolf's head on? Poor guy getting slower and slower. Of course, he's weaving he's heading towards England penalty area at a rate of knots, and there facing him is Terry Fenwick. And we were all screaming at Terry, bring him down. You've got to stop him. And of course, he was on the booking, and he didn't. It was a half-hearted challenge, and then he was in the box, and the rest, we know about. It was, to this day, I blame Terry Fenwick. I'm afraid. Sorry, Terry, but and of course, the irony was later on in the same half, he did a dreadful tackle.
Yeah,
Fenwick.
Yeah,
and should have been booked for that. But wasn't.
Yeah.
And you think, if only.
He takes Burashaga. I think it's Burashaga down pretty much straight after Argentina equalised, and it's a clear, obvious yellow. If he's not getting a yellow for that, he could have got one.
No, I know. Anyway, actually, I just realized we jumped forward because, of course, the wonder goal came after Hands of God, didn't it?
Which is an incredible. I find the thing with that goal, which is so odd, is how many people pick out that it's a handball straight away, and those that don't.
Yeah.
I think when I watched it, it wasn't obvious. It looks like it's offside, but obviously it's come off Hodge. It's Steve Hodge's inadvertent.
It comes off Hodge, so it wouldn't have been offside anyway, even if it was offside. But also, you forget what a great run it was through to Maradona. The anticipation was fantastic.
Yeah,
we sort of forget about that. Again, if while we're in the business of blaming people, Peter Shilton, 5'5" Maradona, 6'1" Peter Shilton, who's winning that in the air?
Even allowing for Maradona extending it, and it's not like Maradona puts his arm.
It's very clever. Very cunning.
Kind of has it broadly at head height, hasn't he? It's not. It doesn't actually gain. I mean, obviously he gains enough because he flicks it in, but it's not like he's gained an extra foot or something. It's only a tiny amount of inches in it.
I know. I saw something. There was something very funny on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. Peter Shilton has a wife who's considerably younger than him, 20 years younger than him. And there was a photo of Mr. and Mrs. Shilton on Twitter, and somebody said he's punching above his weight there, and somebody waited, saying he couldn't have punched a bit higher in 1986. That was cool, but true.
Yeah,
very good. We had last week. We had Michael Lewis on, the US soccer journalist who's covered various World Cups, and he was at this game as part of the kind of US press corps. But he said they were way up in the gods. They were kind of miles away from any of it, and he said it was immediately obvious from where they
really.
It was. Hang on a minute, that's handball, isn't it? That's handball, isn't it? And I think it's one of those. Because when you look at the original TV coverage, there's one angle. When you see the first angle, I don't think it's obvious he's handballed it in, and then there's another angle where you can see. Oh,
No, I agree. I mean, you could sort of understand that if we've got it wrong, really. Let's say, and we'd love to moan about VAR now, but it's up there with the Russian linesman, isn't it? And back in '66, it's like payback time for that almost, wasn't it? It was, not immediately obvious. The referee, either saw it, he clearly didn't. He can't give the decision on a whim, can he? Not quite sure where the linesman was, mind you, but there you go.
I think what Diego Maradona does is absolutely genius, because immediately after handling the ball over Shilton into the net, he runs off in celebration. So in those microseconds where the linesman, as he was in those days, or the referee, had any doubt, Maradona's goal celebration is almost convincing them, well, maybe he did head it. I think those microseconds after the goal, because Maradona's so convincing, I mean, he has the little look over his shoulder and he's like, I think I've got away with this.
Yeah.
And then any doubt that was in the mind of the linesman or the referee, I think has been washed away. And then it's a question of the referee's committed. He's given it, and the celebration continues. It's incredibly brilliant from Diego. I remember at the time, a 14-year-old boy as I was incensed with anger, and I absolutely hated Diego Maradona. It took me ages to get over that, and I'm glad I got over it, because I love Diego Maradona, absolute joy of a footballer. But as a 14-year-old boy, I was absolutely beside myself with rage that this could happen to good old England. But I think Maradona is just brilliant, because he you talk about the goal in the run, he builds up as well. He takes the ball from deep in his own he does a couple of 1-2s, he knocks it in. And Steve Hodge, predominantly left foot, tries to get a left foot on it and just kind of angles it into Maradona's path. And he still has to anticipate that. He still has to be aware of that, and then still have the incredible genius to make that decision to jump and to handle it in, like a Harlem Globetrotter.
Because it wasn't like that, was it? It was that. It was almost like he was just making his head bigger rather than. It was a slightly odd thing to do when he's
that close, he might actually be able to get there with his head.
Yeah. I think he was probably just covering his options, wasn't it?
Yeah,
You know, you can make a case for the defence that he was, was it, as we would say today, was it a natural hand movement? You could argue that he was jumping up, maybe what, but hey, it's a big thing to talk about forever.
Yeah.
I must admit, what I can't remember is how soon after was their second goal.
Minutes.
It's quite soon, isn't it?
Not long, was it?
So, I mean, this is all happening pretty much straight after half time. So Maradona scored his hand goal in the 51st minute. And I think it's within 4 minutes. It's a road pass from Glenn Hoddle, actually. The ball, I think Glenn Hoddle's trying to look for space for Sanson, the left back, running into, and it's never going to get there. Then goes into Maradona. And he's still got a lot to do, but it is incredible that the way he just kind of spins. And I don't know if Steve, you come across, Brian Butler, the commentator, the radio commentator. His commentary is worth listening to. He's doing this in real time as he's seeing it. And, he talks about Maradona kind of turns like a little squat man. And then he kind of leaves Butcher for dead. Butcher's quite pathetic as well, because Butcher's gone the wrong side and then just waves a right leg at him. It's almost, and Peter Reid is still trying to keep up with. This is all going on. Peter Reid is trying to keep up with it. Then Fennick, as you mentioned, Fennick does kind of Maradona does feint and send Fennick the wrong way, but Fennick has an arm on Maradona, and then whether it's that yellow card he got in the first half, he pulls it away, but he could have easily, I think.
I know. I'm sure he knew that he was, one foul away from getting sent off, and that's why he bottled it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Terry Fennick could have taken out Maradona, sacrificed himself, got the red card, and that goal doesn't happen. But I kind of feel glad he didn't, because it is a pretty amazing goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's an entirely different podcast, but is it the greatest World Cup goal ever? I mean, there's been lots of screamers, haven't there? There's been some fantastic long range shots, the Zico and what have you. But in terms of a run like that, I can't think of many that come close to that, really.
As you say, Steve, the start of it, because he's somehow managed to create space. The pirouette past two players.
Yeah, and then the acceleration.
I think we're a bit unlucky. Hoddle gets absolutely smashed. I think that should be a free kick. But ignoring that, it's an unbelievable start. And this goal is, I hadn't watched it for 15, 20 years, however long it's been. And it's one of those where it is better than I even remember it. It is ludicrous. I had sort of forgotten that it starts in his own half, and I heard sort of Terry Butcher, or a few of the England players talking about it, and Terry Butcher is sort of pointing out that I'm the only one who you beat twice on that run. but Peter Reid is and again, you sort of, Peter Reid probably wasn't famous for his box-to-box energy necessarily. It wasn't necessarily what he gave, but
pace mainly, wasn't it? I think he was. Yeah, he was he was a busy, combative midfielder, but nobody was going to say he was lightning quick. And unfortunately, that was living proof of it. But it wasn't game over, though, was it? After that, again, I'm going purely from my own memory now. The turning point was when John Barnes came on.
Yeah,
and Glenn Hoddle had a pretty good effort from a free kick, which,
yes,
they just turned around the post, really good on target effort. But no, it was Barnes coming on that really changed the game. And was it his first appearance at the World Cup? I'm not sure. But he was absolutely electric. My sense today is that game actually finished too soon, because we were back to 2-1, and then there's the far post cross that across the far post that Lineker looked like he was going to get to, but didn't quite. It was like, actually, it was echoes. Do you remember Kevin Keegan in 1982?
It's so similar, isn't it?
It's so similar. If that had gone on, if Keegan had scored that from that diving header, and if Lineker had scored from that diving header, it was a whole different world. But we were excellent for the last, was it 15, 20 minutes or so?
Barnes comes on with 15 minutes to go. And He's an absolute spark of energy, and he's running at the Argentinian defense and just causing loads of problems. The cross that sets up the first goal for Lineker is just incredible. The way he just kind of picks it out with that left foot from the touchline, basically. And it's a nice, easy header for Lineker. And yeah, like you say, well, in between Lineker's second chance that Barnes sets up in almost the same style, where the defender gets just in front of Lineker and heads it away. Carlos Tapia, the Argentinian, does hit the inside of the post for Argentina almost immediately after England scored. So
Yeah,
it
I'd
really
forgotten about that.
on opens up the whole game. Well, Argentina have been tight to that point. Lineker scores in the 81st minute. And the last 10 minutes is just exhilarating and exciting end-to-end stuff, because England are just throwing everything at it. And you're right, Steve, it does end too soon. It's a shame it didn't go to extra time, because it really became a spectacle. And also in the Azteca as well, which was an incredibly famous stadium. But I've heard and seen player accounts afterwards complaining the pitch was absolutely awful, bobbly, hard pitch.
Yeah. They have no idea how to deal with Barnes. In fairness, he's super direct. You didn't often see that version of John Barnes for England, but for 10-15 minutes,
yeah,
he had one mission, didn't he? He would just get to the byline and set the crosses up, and the similarity. It's not, again, it's another of those chances, a bit like Gaza at Euro '96 as well, where you're thinking, each time you watch, you think, oh no, this time he will get on the end of it, and
yeah,
and just seems set up. There is such a wave of momentum with England at this stage, which, in fairness, was probably just Argentina tiring, or Argentina sitting back and defending their lead. But it just shows, when you lose the momentum as the attacking as one side, it's so difficult to stay in a game. And it did feel like, the proper end to that tournament was England to take it to extra time and go out on penalties, of course.
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Take away the hand of God. How does that match finish?
Yeah.
I still have a sense that we would have still come second in the end?
Yes.
When that end would have been, I'm not entirely sure, but I suspect had a sense that, well, if they didn't have a second gear, Maradona certainly did. So even though there's all the outrage about the hand of God, I don't think. This might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but as an England fan, I didn't feel robbed.
Yeah.
In the sense that we'd overwhelmed them and they cheated. Yeah, okay, yes, the only goal was that they cheated their way to it. Were we the better side? Not really. Plucky losers. Yes.
Yeah. It felt it's weird. I had the same feeling. I feel more hard done by Italian 90. I feel more hard done by Euro 96.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that felt like a match of equals, whereas in this instance, England had an amazing last 15 minutes.
Mm.
I mean, I do sort of think that, like you, I suspect even if it stayed 0-0, England wouldn't have taken the handbrake off. Barnes wouldn't have come on. Barnes coming on was kind of by necessity. We had to throw something on, and it happened to work better than you could ever imagine.
Yeah. And as a team, I don't think we had enough players at their peak, really. I think the best of Beardsley and Lineker was to come.
Yeah.
Was always, the subject of a national debate. Should he be in the England team? Shouldn't he? The jury was still out. Bryan Robson injured again. But you go through the individuals, who was at the peak of their powers in that team? Not too many, really. Whereas you can make the case for 90 much better. And 96, of course. But that one, so I'm sounding incredibly disrespectful. There's the players who were frankly the best we got. But, would they, many of them would get in an England team 10 years hence or whatever? Not too many, I suspect.
Hoddle is a prime example, isn't he? Because people desperately, you could always make the case of building your side around Hoddle. And this is the closest England get to doing it. By the time Robson and Wilkins are gone, their midfield is essentially built around having someone to support Hoddle and Hoddle to pull the strings. And without watching the games all over again from start to finish, I'm not sure he personally comes out of it as necessarily a star of that tournament.
No, I think Bobby Robson was never sure about Den Hoddle, was he? He was always a little bit in and out of the side.
Yeah.
Thinking, and, pretty much the same squad in Euro 88, an absolute car crash, lost every single game, badly, lose to Ireland, got torn apart by, that magnificent Dutch side. And even the Russians took us apart. And it's pretty much the same side. Apart from, no more Terry Fenwick, but a very young Tony Adams.
Yeah.
There wasn't, I think the fullbacks maybe evolved a little bit. But, how it's still one of the great mysteries, how we went from 86 being okay, 88 absolutely bloody awful, and then 90 we were, excellent. How did that happen? With the same manager, actually, and not squads that were unrecognisable, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and same sort of issue about English football in terms of England were still trying to play football kind of in that very British style of up and at them as fast as you can. And the general philosophy was you would never win a tournament playing that way, really, because against elite players, you'd only ever get so far. And these England sides are definitely still doing the same. They're journeyman centre-backs, they're trying to get crosses in. Now, plenty of teams can't defend that. But
Hoddle does actually play every minute of every game. And so I think he's absolutely central to Robson in this particular World Cup. But yeah, I think shortly after this, I mean, he was there for 88, but he doesn't go in 90, doesn't he? I think he's dropped around 88, 89. I think after the Euros, I think that's the point where Robson probably decides that he needs to go in a different direction. And the emergence of Gascoigne and Platt changes shape of things anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, you think Des Walker instead of, the much maligned Terry Fenwick, what a game changer, that proved to be.
Yeah. Stuart Pearce comes in for Kenny Sampson. That feels like an improvement.
Well, Kenny Sampson was an excellent left back, to be fair. I mean, Pearce was a different sort of beast, different sort of player. Kenny Sampson was, again, he probably clocked up a lot of caps by then, so he was probably maybe past his best.
Yeah.
That's why I said at the start, I've always felt Trevor Stevens was a very good player for England. But again, I think he was hampered by injuries. And he was only, I think, 23, give or take a year. I think he had some bad injuries and yeah. But of course, we did have Waddle and Barnes. But I think Waddle and Barnes hadn't quite come to boil, had they? Certainly in England terms. John Barnes has had his Maracana goal, hadn't he?
Yeah.
But they would both be much more influential in 90, wouldn't they, than they were in 86, apart from that last 10 minutes from John Barnes. So, yeah. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't know where you're doing your ratings again, but it doesn't, they don't feel, I mean, I must admit, my memory is that they were a likeable bunch, good classic English pros, weren't they? But maybe lacked a little bit of flair. With all due respect to Lineker and Beardsley, but they were solid rather than scintillating.
Probably, I mean, a World Cup quarterfinal losing out to the eventual winners probably does showcase the qualities of Bobby Robson as a football manager as well. Certainly not the type of manager that Brian Clough was, who was in the running to take the England job in 1982 when Bobby Robson gets there. More of a kind of a blazer manager, but in tune with players, in tune with people, good communicator. So I think 86 probably showcases Robson as a football manager, coach, in a more kind of brighter light than probably gets credit for because of the way that England did depart from the tournament. But it definitely sets up the legacy that goes on and supports the 1990 story, which we've done before. I think Robson definitely learns from that experience and takes that into 1990.
And before we'll come on to the ranking in a minute. But I suppose the other thing is is the Maradona factor in this. And I mean, it is incredible to have, with not just in one game, not just in one half, but within the space of 5 minutes, potentially the two most famous goals.
Yeah,
England.
yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good point.
Against England, definitely.
Both of those goals have names: the hand of God and the goal of the century. Now, when I read that fact, and I obviously knew that previously, I thought, how many goals actually get named? And it's a very rare thing. The fact that both of those goals are marked in the history books with their own title is quite a rare and unique thing. We've got the Panenka, but the Panenka applies to a type of goal. These are actually specifically named for those two goals. It's a really rare thing in football.
Yeah, the thing occurred to me, the only World Cup goal that I think you can put in the same bracket is the Jairzinho goal in 1970. Do you remember that fantastic team movement? Was just out of this world, wasn't it? As a team goal, that's Maradona's an individual effort, even though it looked like it was a team goal. It wasn't. It was the Jairzinho goal wasn't it? It was Jairzinho, wasn't it? I'm not going mad.
It's the fullback, wasn't it? Not Roberto Carlos.
Carlos Alberto?
Carlos Alberto.
Yeah,
sorry, but it was Jairzinho who started it, wasn't it? That was sorry. Yeah, we all know the goal we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is a better goal. I would vote for that as my goal for the goal of the century. I think just because of the kind of the beauty, and of course, growing up with all those kind of 101 great goals videos where you just saw that Brazilian goal over and over again. You kind of remember the commentary.
I think what's different though between the Brazil 70 and Argentina 86 is Brazil was littered with superstars. Argentina 86 has got good players, but there's one superstar, and Diego Maradona is probably having the most overwhelming and powerful individual performance from a single player at any World Cup. He's almost single-handedly dragging Argentina on to win the trophy with his incredible brilliance. I mean, it's peak Maradona, isn't it?
Well, he almost scores almost as good a goal against Belgium in the semi-final as well.
That's so true, yeah.
So it's not a freak that he scored. And then in the final, Germany actually almost, I think Mateus does a man-to-man job on him, and and he gets a booking quite not that early, but it's a weird game actually because Maradona has touched that entire tournament, and then you get to the final, and he's not a bit part player in it, but the goals come from other players. He does make the final pass into, I think, Burruchaga though, that kind of sets up the winning goal to win 3-2, and it's an absolutely beautiful pass the way he just kind of sits back and then just prods it into the space for Burruchaga to go on and score the goal. But yeah, you're right. England didn't man mark him, so obviously Reid and Hoddle or Fenwick, they chose not to man mark him. It was collective responsibility in terms of how they were going to handle Diego Maradona. And you're right, Steve. In the first half, they do kind of generally manage him.
Yeah, call it collective irresponsibility in the second half.
I watched a couple of things which I thought I quite enjoyed, with players talking about the thing. One was Ray Wilkins talking about throwing the ball at the referee, and he sort of said something like, I just threw the ball roughly, I just threw the ball in the direction. It's terrible. And he said, I watched it back a couple of weeks ago, and no, I did throw it right hand, didn't I?
Well, can you remember why did he do it? Was it just a throwing decision?
He's caught off. It's weird. He's caught offside, and they flag for it, and it's not. It's a really sort of. It's a relatively high. It's not particularly contentious. He's clearly frustrated at.
Yeah, it's petulant.
At Robson having gone a minute before. He must be thinking the whole. Well, he's also got booked.
2 minutes before that, the referee's blocked him. He's given him a yellow card. And Ray Wilkins wasn't somebody who collected cards that often.
No.
So maybe he was smarting from that, worrying that, Bryan Robson's gone off injured. And then it's pure petulance, the way he throws the ball at the referee. It's just, there are no complaints.
It's out of character.
Yeah, it is.
And it's worth saying how rare it was for an England player to get sent off. I mean, it's obviously the first one in a World Cup.
Yeah.
think Anna Mullery's the first one who ever gets sent off in the
Good point.
European Championships.
Right, yeah.
Technically, it's the semi-final, but against Yugoslavia, but only 4 teams played in it, so it doesn't really feel it's. But the last player who'd been sent off for England before Wilkins was Trevor Cherry in 1977, 9 years before. So
Wow.
and Wilkins barely plays again. I mean, he obviously doesn't get his place back in the team. He's only suspended for 1 game.
So presumably the next England player to get sent off in a World Cup would have been Beckham?
I think it is. I think Beckham's the next one. Yeah. I think it is.
Because nobody got sent off in 1990, did they? Yeah, it would be Beckham. God, that's a... Can you imagine? You wouldn't put Reid Wilkins and David Beckham in that bracket, would you?
And the other thing I thought was interesting, I saw an interview with some of the players talking about both Maradona goals, and they still, whilst they feel, even Bobby Robson, they feel it's a terrible piece of cheating, it's a horrible thing, but they can all appreciate just how good that goal is. All of them, you can tell sort of have kind of, in what I think could be, I don't want to be speaking for Terry Butcher, but I think he's sort of come to terms that Terry Butcher does. I heard him telling a story about that he ended up giving the urine sample, and it's basically him at Maradona waiting to give the sample. Did you handball it? Was it? Or I think Butcher says, was it your head or your hand? And Maradona just right. Okay, we should get to ranking this team, England 86. We have 5 categories of greatness: all-time greats at the top, true greats, touch greatness in the middle, and edge of greatness, our second bottom category. And I can't remember. Blinkered greats to the bottom.
Blinkered greats, yeah.
Yeah, I'll get there in the end.
What's the last one, sorry? The
blinkered greats. That's the
blinkered greats.
Blinkered greats.
What does that mean?
Who was the last team we had as blinkered greats? I think the last team we had as blinkered greats was, I think we had Hereford. Hereford's FA Cup giant killers who were blinkered greats.
Makes it sound like a racehorse.
Jamie, where are you going to go with this England side?
Yeah, I mean, I think I reel off lots on the ranking, but I don't think I need to. I think this is a classic case of edge of greatness. I think it's the 4th tier. There's an argument it's a touch, but I think this is, England go to the quarterfinals, they get beaten by the best player in the world, who then go on and win the World Cup and sets up a legacy where 4 years later we go even closer, but still gloriously failed. So edge of greatness, I think, for me, tier 4.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I agree with that. Despite the hand of God, didn't feel especially hard done by. We were second best to them. I think last 8 was probably fair. Were we were we good enough to be semi-finalists for that squad? Don't think so, really. But we have momentum. So is that classic? It's a little bit like, I always reference everything to, my touchstone was always 1990. It was a little bit, could have been the Belgium game, could have been the Cameroon game. We would get the momentum if we'd done, if that diving Lineker header had gone in. But even then, we're still drawing. Would we have taken it to extra time and won and win on penalties? Big ask. Don't think so. No, I go to edge of greatness.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they rise above it for that Poland game, which is a glorious moment. But you have to weigh it off by, the first 2 games. I mean, they should be topping the group. It's not, they've saved themselves, they've rescued themselves, and they've been involved. And they played a part. That 15 minutes under when Barnes comes on is just a brilliant 15 minutes of football for.
Yeah. Actually, one thing we haven't really mentioned, and we only touched on, of course, it was probably best from our perspective, it was the arrival on the scene of Gary Lineker as a true international class striker, which we sort of glossed over a little bit. That, he really got the golden boot, saved the day for us, and it was the beginning of a, fantastic goal-scoring career for him, wasn't it? And that was probably the biggest plus to come out of the 86 World Cup for England.
You are right, because it's easy to gloss over that, because it's just Lineker scoring 6 goals in a World Cup just seems relatively That's just what he does. He's like he scores all the time, and you don't, as you say, that was him announcing himself on a world stage, isn't it?
He gets his move to Barcelona. So he's had one season with Everton, 85, 86. And then after this World Cup, he gets his move to Barcelona and joins, I think, Terry Venables at Barcelona.
Yeah, what happened to him? Yeah.
Yes, we have to say England World Cup 86. Touch of greatness.
Graham, one thing we probably should cover just before we go.
Yeah.
Steve Hodge. So Steve Hodge, who got his England debut given to him by Bobby Robson, made his debut at league football for Nottingham Forest with Brian Clough's Nottingham Forest against Bobby Robson's Ipswich Town. He assists quite clearly for the Maradona Hand of God goal, a very good assist actually. And he, whether it was the wisest thing to do or not at the time, who knows where his thinking was, but such was the emotion that was being carried by the England team at the time. They didn't want to exchange shirts, but Steve Hodge did take Diego Maradona's shirt, that very shirt that was just in a Mexico local club shop 3 days earlier. He took that shirt and kept hold of it until recently, and in 2022 sold it for 7.1 million. Probably the greatest decision Steve Hodge has ever made in his life, I think. Incredible amount of money. Well, I mean, what amount of money for a single football shirt? He had actually let the shirt out on loan. It was in the it was in the English National Football Museum, in Manchester. But yeah, he got to a point where he decided he wanted to cash in. He's certainly cashed in.
But, I had heard that was always one of Diego Maradona's biggest frustrations in life, that before he died, he hadn't managed to sell Steve Hodge's England shirt.
It's a question. I mean, if you were a teammate of Steve Hodge that day, wouldn't you feel a little bit raw that he'd raked in 7 million quid? We talk about collective responsibility. Where's the collective responsibility there?
Yeah.
Share it out, mate.
Yeah. It definitely feels a bit odd, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely incredible. Excellent. Okay, well, we should wrap up there as ever. I love these England pods. It's great, guy. They're weird to do because you kind of know the story so well. It's as much an emotional. You're kind of almost placing where you were at it, and
no, it's good to. It's two things are really good. Once you do a bit of research, the triggers your memories and brings things back to you. And there's also a lot of stuff we didn't realise, or if we did realise, you'd long since forgotten. I'd long forgotten that Colombia were meant to have it. I didn't know that. There's a great picture, actually, which I saw of England in Monterrey on the first day on the team coach, and they've got guys with machine guns standing in the yard of the team coach because there's some sort of security fears. And it was, we were making a fuss about, no Cole Palmer, no Harry Maguire in the World Cup squad. Back then, it was no Liverpool players. So quite who the Liverpool players would have been, I'm not entirely sure.
It's difficult to think. I think Maman maybe, but would you pick Maman ahead of?
Yeah.
Not many. Most of them are in the Scotland squad.
Yeah. Was McDermott still a Liverpool player?
Moved on. So Alan Kennedy and Phil Neal were still there, but I think they were pretty much finished with their England career. Both of them had been kind of removed by Bobby Robson. Phil Neal went to the 82 World Cup, but he was done. But most of the Liverpool team was made up of Celts, so players from Scotland, Ireland, and Wales generally.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh well.
Happy days. Well, thank you, Steve, as ever. We will get you on again in a future one, and I think we might take you off international duty. I think in the next season we need probably to do this and talk about. There's one very impressive Reading side that set records flying. So I think maybe you can dust down.
I have to say, whenever a side gets a decent start in the division, the whole fan base starts talking about, if they win every game between now and into, they get more than 106, And of course, it never happens, Birmingham did it, but they did it in League One, not the Championship.
We're keeping
and
some
also by spending about 200 million quid, so it doesn't count. But it's a good story there. Still stands. It's 20 years points record. It's a good one. It's a good one.
Excellent.
It's a,
So thanks
Great.
again, Steve. And thank
Yep.
you, Jamie, as ever.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I love this tradition we have now every season where we, at the end, as we're wrapping up, we get to talk about England. But I am looking forward to the Reading one. I think that would be great fun.
good stuff.
And we have one more World Cup special for you before we wrap up our season. So in traditional style, we covered great teams who got to World Cups, but we're going to look at a great team that should have got to a World Cup. And we're looking at France in 1994 and their failure to make it to the USA. That's next time.